picture like that, I wouldn't ever die.
And this monster starts running right at me.
Annihilated by nuclear bombs.
Beast is not dead. I put 4 bullets into him.
Oh, you're crazy.
But I saw that monster too. All I want is for someone to believe me.
Contaminated.
Face. Horrible. Looked like it would scare you to death.
All right, let's get to work.
The camera flashes, and a Polaroid slides out. Blank at first. In the dim light of a Denver apartment, Ted Serios leans forward, glassy-eyed, clutching a small tube he calls his gizmo. A few seconds pass before an image begins to bloom. Not a face, not a shadow, something that shouldn't be there at all. A building Ted swears he's never seen. Captured not through a lens, but somehow through his mind. Today, on Beyond the Shadows podcast, we are discussing Ted Serios and psychic photography. That's right. That is absolutely right. Welcome in, people. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. Oh my God, I totally forgot to change the name of this episode. Hold on. Shame on me. I'm dumb. Here I'm like, yeah, I knocked it out of the park today. I really got everything set up. Fantastic. Fan-freaking-tastic. There we go. Now we're updated. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. Welcome to episode 42, season 2 of Beyond the Shadows podcast. I am your host, Victus. And this is the greatest podcast on the planet, also known as Beyond the Shadows podcast. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you. We got a whole buttload of new subscribers on YouTube. Thank you, everybody that subscribes on YouTube. Appreciate every single one of you. I have no good way of really showing thanks. I have no good content to share. I've got no behind the scenes stuff because I do this in my free time. Maybe one day we'll have some great extra content to give you just as a way of saying thanks, but thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. So I say again, this is season 2, episode 43 of Beyond the Shadows podcast. Today we're talking about the psychic photography phenomenon known as Ted Serios. Absolutely wild and bizarre case. Absolutely wild and bizarre. I don't know how else to describe it other than absolutely wild and bizarre. Let me make sure this audio doesn't come blasting through. Yeah, we're good. Absolutely wild story. Watched a whole documentary on this, and it just seemed like the right course of action to take was doing an episode on it. So tonight, this is what we're going to do. We're going to talk about Ted Serios and his, as he liked to call it, thoughtography, but also is being labeled as psychic photography. We have the actual photos taken by him, or not by him, but by one of the researchers that tried to debunk him. We have many photos that he has taken. Wild little story, absolutely wild little story. So let's not dilly-dally too much more. Let's dive right into it. We're going to get into this week's news and paranormal. We got some good stuff this week. We got it good. Are you ready? Because I'm ready. Get ready to turn up and get sideways and have some beverages and talk about the paranormal. Let's get into it. So as of November 9, 2025, this is your news in paranormal. Starting off with UFO sightings and research, an American survey found that 60% of U.S. adults have experienced at least one paranormal event, with younger generations showing the strongest interest. Over 2,000 UFO sightings were reported in the first half of 2025, an increase from the previous year, which, according to the National UFO Reporting Center. Discussion is ongoing regarding the potential for an increase in public reporting of UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomenon, due to congressional hearings and a reduction in social stigma. Some recent sightings of UFO sightings, or some recent data in UFO sightings in early November 2025, which is, geez, we're 9 days into the month, so were likely the astronomical phenomenon of Jupiter's moons casting shadows on the planet's disk, a double transit. News bulletin mentioned a UK UFO, a UFO sighting and discussions surrounding the theory whether aliens could be future humans, which is a very interesting thing that I like to consider, that we aren't necessarily being visited by extraterrestrials from another planet, but we are potentially being visited by our future selves of a human race. Very interesting way of looking at that. Then paranormal events and locations. Casadauga, a small community in Florida known as the psychic capital of the world, offers year-round ghost tours, seances, and psychic readings with reports of ghostly children and strange energies captured on film at the haunted Hotel Casaga. A paranormal investigator with 30 years of experience discussed his work in de-haunting houses, describing methods that involve communicating with spirits who may not realize they have died. And a movie titled Melonhead's House of Crow, inspired by a Northeast Ohio cryptid legend, has been released for streaming in an effort to keep the local lore alive. Hey, that would be a good future episode. And paranormal and entertainment, the final film in the Conjuring horror series, The Conjuring Last Rites, has been a global box office hit. And this is a wild one. Get ready for this. This one kind of caught me off guard, but a stage play adaptation of Paranormal Activity is scheduled to open in Los Angeles in this month. So figure that one out. How they gonna turn Paranormal Activity into a stage play? It's just really bizarre. Yeah, just making sure the sounds are working. I think it turned off. And Travel Channel's Travel Channel's long-running show Kindred Spirits is in pre-production for its 7th season, and that knocks out our this week's news in paranormal. Oh nope, there we go. The sound started again. That should be fading out. Thank you very much. Ads in progress, everybody. I will do what I can to stay on top of that. All right. We have we got ads running. I need to take 30 seconds and I need to send somebody a link to the show. So hold on. Bear with me. I know usually I'm on top of my shit, but I'm just all over the place. Hold on. I cannot type today. Come on, quit auto-correcting my stuff, yo. What are you doing? Stupid phone, stupid smartphone. There we go. All right, cool. Now we can move forward. Sorry about that delay, folks. So I ran into somebody the other day who was like, hey, I see you do podcasting. I said, yeah. And he says, what about? And I'm like,
Ollie move, Ollie move, Ollie move.
oh, hey, what's going on? Worlds of confusion. What's going on, man? How's it going? How you doing? How you been? How you be? We're about to do a little segment. But I do a little preamble before we do the segment. A guy comes up and says, hey, so you do podcasts? I said, yeah. He said, well, what about? And I said, well, paranormal stuff.
Yay.
And he goes, well, I got a question for you. I said, sure, what's up? And he goes, what shirt are you wearing today? Ooh, psych, gotcha. Our favorite little mini segment known as What Shirt Are You Wearing Today? Check it out. Let's see what shirt, anybody in chat feels like chiming in, feel free to. No shame here whatsoever. Here's the shirt I'm wearing today. Got this really cool, like, vintage Volkswagen. It's like a Volkswagen ad from a magazine. Like, this was a full-page ad. Let's see if it's got the year on this.
Nice.
Oh, it's all in German too. That's cool. I hadn't even noticed. I think it's like a 60s. So it's like a 60s or 70s model Bug. So cool little shirt. I saw it and I was like, no way. Who doesn't like a good Beetle, right? That's what shirt I'm wearing today.
I usually have a Stephen Rhodes on, but today it's a thermal top and a Greenpeace jumper.
That's okay. We like to take the mundane and turn it into a good experience, such as, what shirt are you wearing today? So thank you for your participation. We're going to move forward. Confusion, we got a great story tonight. This is a wild little case. I'm still kind of on the fence on this one, and per the course, as of usual, or as of lately, I've been having somebody else write the script, and so this way I'm able to kind of keep the surprise aspect of the investigation fresh. Keep it to where it's not just me being, yeah, I know all this stuff and I'm going to downplay the entire case. No, I know a little bit about this case, and I know a little bit about this guy. I've seen the photos. I watched a documentary just recently. Pretty cool little case we got going on here. So for those of you who don't know, tonight we're going to be discussing Ted Serios. Ted Serios is probably the most famous psychic photographer. But here's the caveat. He does some weird stuff when he's doing the photography. And we'll get into some of this later. Hopefully my plan is to pull up a video of him actually doing the thought photography, and so you could really see what's going on with this guy's head. It's a wild little case, but we've got probably like 15 or 20 good photos that he's taken. And once you hear more of the story, you'll understand what's going on. All right, so cool. Let's get into it, folks.
Oh, cool. Sounds awesome.
It is. It's really unique. So, like, when I think of thought photography, I think of like somebody like blindly following their instincts to, point and shoot a camera and take a picture, right? Well, here's the kicker with thought photography or psychic photography, whatever you want to call it. They're using a camera pointed at a person's head. And sometimes these pictures are taken with the lens cap on. And when the film is developed, there's images that shouldn't be there. In a nutshell, this is what we're dealing with. This is what's called psychic photography. And this is what we're going to be talking about tonight. This guy, in my opinion, is the most famous psychic photographer, or thoughtographer, as he likes to call himself. And like I said, it's a really interesting case, and let's just dive right into it. I'm ready. If you're ready, I'm ready. I'm ready. So I hope you're all ready, because we're moving forward. Let's get into Act 1, everybody. Act 1.
Dope.
A little bit of round of applause for Act 1. There it is. Yeah. All right, so let's dive right into it. Okay, so usually we do like the creepy outside sound effects, but I don't think the creepy outside sound effects are right for this one. So let's try this one. Yeah, this might be better. This might be better. If the background sounds are too loud, please feel free to let me know. I am adjusting them on the fly. I'm trying to get optimal volume levels here. It is difficult to do when I don't have time to do full audio checks. Let's dive into it. Act 1, everybody. Act 1. The story of Ted Serios. Okay, we're good. The story of Ted Serios doesn't begin with a scientist in a
Seems
lab.
good so far.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It's really helpful, because I'm monitoring the sounds, but it's hard to know what's, the level is coming through the speakers of people watching. But thank you. I appreciate that. The story doesn't begin with a scientist in a lab or a psychic in a darkened seance room. It begins with a bellhop in Chicago. A man with no scientific training, no reputation, and no reason anyone should have believed him. And yet, for a few strange years in the 1960s, people did. Ted was not what most people would call an ordinary man. Born in Kansas in 1918, he spent much of his life drifting, working odd jobs, taking to drink, and earning a reputation as a talker. He was restless, fidgety, prone to sudden bursts of enthusiasm that bordered on manic. He worked at Chicago's upscale Hilton Hotel, carrying luggage for businessmen and tourists, joking with guests in passing, then long nights with alcohol and wild stories. Somewhere between those late night shifts and too many shots of whiskey, Ted began telling anyone who'd listen that he could project pictures from his mind onto film. To most, it was a barroom nonsense, a drunk's boast. But one of those listeners, a friend named George, who shared Ted's fascination with the psychic phenomena, decided to put him to the test. And one night, George produced a Polaroid camera, a novelty at the time. The room was dim, the air thick with cigarette smoke. Ted, grinning, held the camera up and shouted something incoherent before pressing the shutter button. And when the film developed, George swore he saw something. A blurry ghost shape, where there should have been only darkness. It was enough to start the rumor, enough to make someone pick up their phone and call a man who might take such a claim seriously. Dr. Jule Eisenbud. Dr. Eisenbud was a psychiatrist from Denver, a man with an academic career and a deep curiosity about the outer limits of the human mind. He had been fascinated by parapsychology, the study of extrasensory perception and psychic phenomena both, for years. He believed that if ESP or psychokinesis existed, they could be documented scientifically. And when he heard of Ted Serios, he was skeptical but intrigued. The idea of thoughtography, photographs created directly by mental projection, wasn't a new idea, but it had always been confined to rumor, folklore, or trickery. And if Ted's claims were real, they could provide physical evidence of the mind's influence on matter. So Eisenbud arranged a meeting. Ted arrived in Denver in 1964, looking like anything but a man of mystery. He was short, balding, rough around the edges, and visibly nervous. Eisenbud's first impression was a man caught between bravado and desperation. someone who wanted to prove something, perhaps even to himself. The psychiatrist decided to give him a chance. The first session was held in Eisenbud's apartment. The doctor brought out a Polaroid land camera, fresh packs of film, still sealed. A few colleagues gathered to observe. Ted fidgeted in his chair, mumbling to himself. Then from his pocket he produced what would become his trademark object, a small black paper tube, which he called his gizmo. It looked homemade, like something a child might build in school. Rolled paper, tape, sometimes a bit of foil inside. He explained that it helped him focus his thoughts. They loaded the camera with film, pointed it at a blank wall, and waited. Oh wait, I lost my spot. That's what I get for looking away. Ted pressed the gizmo to the lens, concentrated, and shouted, "Now!" The shutter clicked. The film slid out, and everyone watched as the image slowly developed in front of them. At first it was nothing, just a familiar gray haze of undeveloped Polaroid film. But within moments, shapes began to form. Lines, a faint outline. When it fully cleared, Eisenbud and his witnesses were stunned. On the photo was what looked like a building. Not perfectly clear, but distinct enough to recognize architectural structure. It was the first of hundreds. And over the next few months, Eisenbud conducted dozens of controlled sessions. He documented everything meticulously. Lighting conditions, film types, camera models, number of witnesses, Ted's physical state, which often included varying levels of intoxication, and whether or not he used his gizmo. The doctor treated each photograph as data, logging successes and failures alike. Ted's images were inconsistent. Sometimes the Polaroids were blank or overexposed. Other times they contained vague blurs that could be dismissed as random artifacts. But occasionally, they were unmistakable shapes, recognizable monuments, landscapes, even the Parthenon, the Taj Mahal, and buildings from Denver that Ted allegedly had never visited. Eisenbud invited skeptics, including photographers, magicians, and engineers, to observe. He encouraged them to handle the equipment themselves, and on multiple occasions, Ted produced images under these watchful eyes. With the camera and film controlled entirely by others, even when the gizmo was inspected and found empty, images still appeared. The doctor became convinced something extraordinary was happening. He wrote in his notes, "If this is all a hoax, it's one of the most remarkable sophistication beyond the mechanical capabilities of man before me." For every session that produced nothing, another brought inexplicable results. Sometimes Ted claimed to focus on a mental slide of a place, something he pictured vividly, like a photograph, in his head. Other times, he said the images came unbidden, as though projected by forces beyond him. He'd shout, convulse, or laugh maniacally just before an image appeared. Then he slumped back, exhausted, sometimes muttering that the energy was too much. Hold, please. Ted's growing fame was both a blessing and a curse. But we got an ad coming soon, folks. A word spread quickly through parapsychology circles, and Eisenbud found himself contacted by journalists, researchers, and skeptics alike. In a time when UFO sightings, ESP research, and psychic phenomena were part of the cultural conversations, Ted's thoughtographs, as he coined them, captured imagination everywhere. But Ted himself was unpredictable. His personality oscillated between charm and chaos. When sober, he could be shy, even humble. When drunk? Sorry. When drunk, which he was often, he became loud, erratic, and combative. He'd berate witnesses, shout obscenities at the camera, and demand alcohol before performing. For Eisenbud, it was maddening. He was trying to conduct rigorous scientific research with a subject who treated it more like a circus act. Yet somehow, despite the dysfunction, Ted's abilities persisted, or seemed to. And by 1965, Eisenbud decided to publish preliminary findings in academic journals. He decided Ted's processing clinical language, carefully avoiding claims of supernatural origin. He framed it instead as a psychological phenomenon, perhaps related to psychokinesis.
Hey, Bad, looking what do you got cooking?
Hey, what's going on, Heffies? How you doing, bud? Hef's here, everybody. There you go. Glad you're here, bud. How's it going?
Have me our peak.
What you up to, man? We are currently discussing Ted Serios and psychic photography.
Laid around bed for a long time.
Yeah, I struggled to get out of bed this morning. I sat up till like 2:33 this morning waiting for the internet to come back, and it just never came back on. I don't know what the hell was going on.
I have me worlds 31 hype, worlds 31 high, poly m ulch, worlds 31 high, worlds 31 high.
But yeah, I did play a little bit of Valheim
Have
today.
me wave.
I ended up, I did a little bit of mining. I got caught up with y'all, killed the boss myself, got my pick.
Your voice is so cozy that I feel asleep a bit.
Oh, fantastic.
Valheim. Yay.
Yes, Valheim. Yes. Oh my gosh. I am getting near, getting very near 600 hours of gameplay. Very near. I've played so much
yeah,
Valheim.
we're doing Valheim when I can get the ghoul to play with us.
I'm just trying to...
Hope she can continue going. I fucking love Valheim.
Valheim is the best. It is my favorite game. I'm not going to progress much further. I'm just going to, you know, map out some dungeons, collect materials.
I'm at nearly 200 hours.
It is so easy. We have tried and tried and tried.
I mean, 2,000.
2,000? What? That's impressive. Thank you. That's, I mean, that deserves a round of applause.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love it.
I thought my little 500 hours was a lot. Holy nuts.
It's basically the only game I play.
So my question for you is, have you finished the story? Because I haven't. I just build shit.
I don't play many games.
Valheim is...
Story isn't finished in the game.
Well, I mean, have you gone to the end of the story that they have so far? Because I've only made it through like 2 or 3 of the bosses, and then I get bored with the questing, and I just build massive forts. I'm in the process of turning a whole world into a thriving city.
No, not yet. I'm at the Ashlands, but still got to kill the king.
Ooh. I have never been to the Ashlands. I don't know much about it. I think Heffy said it right. We get to like the snow, the mountains.
Kill the king, kill the king.
We get to the snow in the mountains, and then we lose our steam.
It's pretty brutal.
I believe it. Love that game, man. I love it. It's the only game that I haven't gotten bored with in a few months. I always come back to it. I will always play it. It's nice and easy breezy.
Happy to play Bodyguard.
Ooh, okay. I'll keep you in mind for sure. We'll see about it. We'll see about it. Who's texting me now? Who's texting me?
They gave us turnip lanterns for Halloween.
Oh yeah, they look like little jack-o'-lanterns where they're made out of turnips.
Ooh, you listened to any of the Parapod yet?
No, I haven't. I usually listen to podcasts when I'm at work, so I will listen this week because I am currently out of audiobooks. So I will definitely listen this week. Thank you for the link, by the way. I appreciate that. But that being said, we need to push forward, folks. We need to progress the story.
You're welcome. Push it.
Brewskis. We'll take
Let's talk about Valheim for a long time. Push it real good.
Push it real good.
Olimol.
We'll sidebar when we hit the end of Act 1.
I love you, HEPH.
F's a good dude. But I am going to... don't be afraid to talk amongst yourself, but I am going to mute...
I try.
I'm going to mute speech chat till we finish.
It's a real effort. Exceptional dude.
He really is. Heffies and I go way back. Way back. Probably one of my first besties. We're very young. Very young, indeed. But let's push forward. We'll sidebar here at the end of Act 1. We're nearly there. So by 1965, Eisenbud decided to publish preliminary findings in academic journals. He described Ted's process as clinical language, carefully avoiding claims of supernatural origin. I did not run out of my house with toast in my mouth. I mean, it took so long for me to get to your house. Half that. If I did run out of my house with toast in my mouth, it wouldn't have made the trip. However, not everyone was convinced. And among those who doubted him was James Randi. So we discussed James Randi early in Season 1. The Amazing Randi, they called him. James Randi was a very interesting individual. So there was this show. Hold on, before I tell this story, let me make sure I got this the story correct. I think I got it right. Oh, no, okay. So I've got the opposite side of this. So James Randi was on this television show. What was it called? Hold on. Let me find the name of this. Jesus Christ. What was the name of the show? I can't find it precisely. So this show goes way back. So what this show did was it brought people on that claimed to have like psychic or supernatural powers or abilities, and what they would do is they would test them live on TV, and they would be like, "Here is my performance. This is what I can do," and then James Randi would just quietly sit there and watch, and he would see their performance, and then he would be like, "Okay, now let's redo this, but here I want to change the conditions of the experiment." So famously, there's this video of a guy who claimed he could move things with his mind, right? And dude dressed like a Shaolin monk. Like, a dude was a very white individual in the 70s. Very, very white guy. Bowl cut, big old crazy handlebar mustache, but he dressed like a Shaolin monk, right? And his thing was, I can move stuff with my mind. Here, let me show you. And he would lay down a phone book. And then he would be like, and a page would roll over. And then he'd do it again. He would push you. His hand would do this little shake thing. And he would push a page. But if you watch the video closely, you notice that the guy's mouth is parallel to the book. So James Randi noticed it immediately. And he says, well, here, let's reset this experiment. I want to sprinkle baby powder around the book because I think you're blowing on it with your mouth. Yeah, Secrets of the Psychics. You got it. You got it. Yeah, it was a PBS show, so of course I watched it because we didn't have cable at my house. I wonder, Hef, do you think I can get away with showing a clip of that video and still use the VOD? I don't know. I'm sketchy about showing copyrighted materials. It never really seemed to work out for me. It is old, yeah. Sure, let's give it a shot. Let's give it a shot. Hey, if it gets dinged, I'll edit it out and re-upload. Keep it muted? Yeah, sure, we can mute it. That's totally fine. I'm looking for this one very specific video. Come on, I just saw it. Where'd it go? Oh, here it is. There we go. Oh, it's a Facebook video. Well, it works out, because I'm not logged in here, so not like y'all could see my personal information anyway. I mean, y'all know who I am anyway. Let's switch over. With subtitles. I don't know if this has subtitles. This is Facebook. Do we get subtitles on this? Doesn't have a way to turn... Okay, hold on. Let's switch back. I'm gonna find this on YouTube. Because YouTube will surely have... Oh, you found it already. Wow, look at you go, Hef. You're on it. Like a hobo on a ham sandwich. All right, so let's see how long this is. This is only 5 minutes, but we're going to start from the beginning here. Y'all ready for this? Check this shit out. Oh shit, I didn't turn on, let's do this. And this. There we go. So interestingly enough, this is Bob Barker hosting the show. Would it be beneficial if I read the subtitles? Would that help everybody watching? So I can read it and then you can pay more attention to the video. That seems fair, right? I'm gonna turn speech chat back on. He says, with us now, you claim to have psychic powers, don't you? He says, yes, I do. It's something that you have discovered recently, or you have known of it since childhood. How did it all begin? He says, well, everyone's born with it. It's just a matter of development. He says, what you're going to do, James, is I'm going to move a pencil for you with just my psychic powers. Okay, so he's waving his hands of a pencil hanging over the edge of a table. This outfit is absolutely ridiculous. Okay, so the pencil rotated. That's all it did. It was posted on the edge of the table, and it just rotated a little bit. We can go back and see that again. I didn't notice it until right before it switched. Here in the lower left corner is like a zoomed in version of that, so you could see the pencil rotating. This guy's outfit, ridiculous. So he turns the pencil rotates. He says, it's true, you can also turn pages of this telephone directory. He says, yes, it is. Will you do that for us? He says, I will try. I'll take the pencil off the table. All right, yes, there you are, James. He said, you open up to any page. So now he has an open phone book in front of him. See, he gets down. Oh, look how quickly he does that. Ooh, he's really yucking it up to showmanship here. He says, the amazing Randy maintains that you did not use psychic power at all, but it was trickery, and he is prepared to pay you $10,000 if you can do it using psychic power. Here he is, the amazing Randy. Amazing Randy's got a great track record. You can look this guy up. He was old in the 60s. Jeez. He says, you saw his demonstration backstage. Says, yes, I did. You accept that he's a demonstration of psychic power, or do you believe that he used trickery? He says, I don't accept it as a demonstration of psychic power, Bob, but I think the solution is rather simple. I think that Mr. Heydrich is merely to accomplish this effect by blowing on both the page and on the pencil. The reason is rather simple, because the pencil reacts even to the currents of the air conditioning in the studio. It would be very difficult to put controls on it in such a way that normal currents of air that are present all the time would not move the pencil. For example, oh look, the amazing Randy did it. What do you know? He says, are you prepared to pay him $10,000 if he can turn the page of the telephone directory with certain controls? He says, that's right. My theory, as yet unproven, of course, is that accomplished simply by blowing, through rather cleverly, I must admit, done. There should be a simple way around with a lot of instrumentation to demonstrate the fact by using one very simple control. So he's sprinkling very, very light, fluffy white plastic flakes around the phone book. This guy's sweating already. Look at him. He's trying to figure out how to do this. So these are very light, fluffy pieces of plastic that he's putting, so like artificial snow. Watch him fall flat. Watch him fall flat, folks. He just stands up and shakes his head. He can't do it. He said the styrofoam and the lights form electricity, which pulls the page. He says, look. Yeah, the styrofoam, the plastic stuff that he laid down is creating static electricity, so he can't do it. Right. Right. Yeah, this guy got shut down on live TV. Let's see him fail again. Let's watch him concentrate on this and fail horribly. Oh no, he can't do it. Bless his little soul. Look at this guy's little face. Was he trying to dress like Bruce Lee or something? The Amazing Randy, folks. The Amazing Randy. There he is, everybody. The Amazing Randy doing what the Amazing Randy does. Absolutely hilarious. Yeah, that guy couldn't. This is what Randy does. All right, James Randi is the debunker of all debunkers. Very famous in parapsychology or parapsychological circles because he is the most famous debunker.
Flip 3 claps, flip 3 SC, flip 3 claps, flip 3 SC, flip 3 claps.
Yeah, he. So there's this really interesting podcast that I listened to for a while called The World's Greatest Con. And each season he discusses like the greatest cons of world history, right? So the first season he discussed how during World War II, in an effort to feed the Nazis bad information, they took a deceased American, dressed him in army fatigues, and dropped him out of the back of a ship with fake intel in his pocket, or dropped him out of the back of an airplane with fake intel in his pocket, parachuted his dead body down, and he landed behind enemy lines. And, of course, the Nazis found him, his dead body. They took his body, did an autopsy, went through his personal effects, and found this fake intel. And it was this one piece of fake intel that pushed the Nazis to defend the shores of Normandy instead of a major front where we were coming in from behind. And as a result of this, a lot of people say that this was the crux, the turning point of World War II, was after Normandy, and incredible researchers on his staff that really bring the whole story to life. But he did I think it was his second or third season, he talked about these group of kids that conned James Randi. Like, they had James Randi convinced that they had real psychic abilities. Like, they strung him along for years and wasted somewhere of like $22 million of research money trying to develop like psychological warfare, like parapsychological warfare. Really interesting podcast. You should go out and check it out. It's called The World's Greatest Con. I will say the man's voice is golden, the host. Oh man, dude's got a voice. Dude has got a voice. Awesome podcast. If you like good, engaging storytelling, good research that has to lace in history with the storyline, you should check out The World's Greatest Con. You would love it. But these group of teenagers effectively conned James Randi. They beat the unbeatable man. So among those who doubted him, James Randi, the famous musician or debunker of paranormal claims, Randi accused Serios of sleight of hand, suggesting he concealed a small photographic slide somewhere in the gizmo or used reflections to trick the camera. Others echoed his sentiment. To them, Serios was simply a clever con man taking advantage of a gullible psychiatrist. But none could fully explain how he managed to produce images even under controlled conditions, and sometimes without his gizmo. And even when stripped of his coat, searched and kept under close supervision, he still produced remarkable effects. So Eisenbud doubled down. He began inviting reporters to observe sessions live. In one particularly famous case, a Life magazine photographer witnessed Ted produce an image of a building that matched a photo later found in an encyclopedia in Eisenbud's home. Though Ted swore he'd never seen it, the coincidence fueled both sides. Believers called it proof of psychic perception, and skeptics called it an unconscious fraud. And by 1966, Eisenbud had gathered enough material to begin writing what would become his book, The World of Ted Serios, Thoughtography. Studies of an Extraordinary Mind. He believed it would change history, proof that human thought could imprint on the physical world. But as the book neared completion, the world around Ted began to collapse. His notoriety attracted not just skeptics. Wow, I lost my spot that quickly. Holy shit. Not just skeptics, but pranksters, hoaxers, and those looking to exploit him. Public demonstrations became hostile. Some witnesses shouted accusations mid-session. Others demanded to inspect every object in the room. Under that scrutiny, Ted's abilities faltered. The photos stopped coming, or came only as faint blurs, impossible to interpret. Eisenbud's notes from this period reveal a growing sense of frustration and heartbreak. He had devoted years of his life to Ted's case, only to watch it unravel in the spotlight. Yet even in failures, he saw something meaningful. The evidence, he claimed, showed that Ted's abilities were real, but influenced by emotional stress. If Ted doubted himself, or if others doubted him, the effect diminished. It was, he said, a psychic feedback loop of belief. In those early sessions, when the room was quiet and the Polaroid hummed softly as it developed, witnesses described a sense of awe that's hard to quantify. A photo appearing from nothing, as if summoned by will alone. And for a moment, belief felt possible. The impossible seemed captured on film. But belief is fragile. And in the months to come, it would be tested, dismantled, and turned against them both. Because if Ted Serios really could photograph his thoughts, the next question wasn't how, it was what else he might bring into focus. Okay, cool. So that's the end of Act 1, everybody. The end of Act 1. So already we're off to a pretty wild start. This is a very strange story, to say the least. I'm going to see if I can...
Chi-op 1, Chi-o clap 2, Chi-op 1, Chi-o clap 2, Chi-op 1, Chi-o clap 2, Chi-op 1, Chi-o clap 2.
Doing... I'm going to see if I can find a video of him doing his thought photography. Thoughtography, as they call it. All right, here we go. I think this is good. Let me make sure there's a few clips. I just want to show you the video of him actually doing it. That's the only thing I really want to show you. It's a strange process. So like when I think about it, like where's one of my cameras? There's one behind. Thought, yeah, different type of thought. Thoughtography, also known as OnlyFans. So here we go. Check this out. This is really weird. Like this whole guy is really weird, and it really shows. So that's it. He does like a headbang into the camera and gets these wild photographs. Let's see if we've got another footage or more footage of him doing his thing.
Oh yeah, shut up. I would never believe that in a million years.
Look. It happens right in front of the camera. And look, they're peeling the look at a damn street sign. It's wild. It's absolutely wild.
Yeah, lots of things happen in front of the camera.
So let's look at some of the photographs. So these are some of the photographs taken. It is just wild.
I reckon he pre-exposed them and then put the film back in the camera.
Well, see, here's the thing, though, is he would do freaking, oh, well, we're looking at, I was like, why does that look weird? Because it's the freaking slide, it's not the slideshow. So the people doing the controls and the experiments were bringing in their own sealed packages of camera or film for the cameras. So if you don't know, here in a little bit when I take a break, I will grab my Polaroid off the shelf downstairs, the one that they use for this same experiment here. And Polaroid film comes in a sealed package. So when you buy it, it's in a box. You open the box, there's a Mylar bag, and you have to physically unseal the Mylar bag, and then there's a plastic cartridge. And the plastic cartridge is a light sealed box that holds all your negatives. You feed it into the camera, and then as you take a photo, it exposes to light, pushes out your input, or pushes out whatever you took a photo of. There is no real effective way to do it.
I used to have a Polaroid.
I have many, many cameras. In another life, I was a photographer, and as a result, I have several hundred cameras downstairs. Polaroids are my favorite because they give some of the best photos, in my opinion. I mean, my very favorite is back here.
Oh, nice saying not.
I love Polaroid cameras. I do. Let's go back. I want to look at that camera. He was... Slideshow. Pause. Okay, I think I have this camera downstairs. Or I have one close to it.
That L looks like a medium format.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll grab mine when I go downstairs here in a little bit and take my bathroom break.
Maybe.
I have never been able to successfully open a package of Polaroid film without destroying all of the photos or destroying all the negatives in the package, because they're initially sealed in a plastic packaging, like a plastic bag, like a Mylar bag, and once you open that, then there's also like a plastic frame, a rigid plastic frame that holds a stack of these negatives, and then they are sealed in a very specific way because they are raw negatives ready to be exposed to light. Okay? And as soon as you open that hard plastic package that they're stacked in, you immediately expose all of those photos to light. So in order to do this would take a very, very careful hand. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying it would take an awful lot of work. And the big thing for me is they talk about how this guy is a raging alcoholic. I fail to see how somebody with such a developed state of alcoholism could produce this effect with something that needs a careful feather touch. Do you see what I'm saying? Maybe it's just me. It's my opinion on the matter. Hard for me to believe that somebody who's drinking that much is really carefully peeling apart a Polaroid camera film cartridge in a dark room and then very carefully peeling away layers, exposing it to an image, putting the layers back together, restacking it, putting it back in a plastic container, and then you have to predict which place the people doing the controls and the experiment are going to buy film from. Put it back in its packaging, take it to the store that you predicted that they were going to buy film from, and hope that they picked it up. It's a lot of work for just a little bit of notoriety. For what it's worth, that's my 2 cents on the matter. However, before we tie into Act 2, we got an ad coming, so I'm going to take a quick little bathroom break. Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be back. I get a wee. It's part of being human. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back with the camera. Hold, folks. I have returned. And I bring tidings. I bring gifts of frankincense and myrrh. So let's talk about Polaroid cameras. So this is my one-step 600, one of my very favorite Polaroids. There's a piece of me that wants to say I have film in it. I'm trying to see. It feels heavier than normal. Let's just see what happens when I press the button. Okay, nothing. Good deal. We're probably empty then. Let's look. I was hoping this had the cartridge in it. No, it doesn't. I didn't want to open it until I got back up here. But this right here is the Polaroid Color Pack 2. This is the same camera that they used in the experiments with Ted Serios. Exact same camera. Let's pop this thing open.
Cool.
So, ooh, look, we're in luck. We're in luck. This has an old cartridge inside of it. Okay, so this camera is from 1965. This is a very old Polaroid. So when you open this up, here's your cartridge. So physically, inside the camera, there's not much to tamper with. It's essentially just the shutter. This was the deviation from the original land camera, which is like this one, with a battery in the cartridge. This one is special because it didn't require the expensive film cartridge with the batteries in it. This one, if you look really closely, in the inside, see there's two AA batteries. So this one had its own standalone batteries, which made the film cheaper. However, they were still sealed. And this, in the 1960s, is what the film cartridge looked like. So this is a hard plastic cartridge with a spring-loaded little back here. And what you're looking at here is, this is the backing that holds all your film. So it's spring-loaded. And what you're going to get is a stack of individual Polaroid slides that are in here. And as you take a photo, choop, the light passes through this and creates your image. Your Polaroid slides out. And I don't think these batteries are any good, but I'll give it a shot. Okay, shutter works still. But yeah, the batteries are very dead. So you should hear a click. And then a of the slide being pushed, or the individual frame being pushed out of this casing. So this man, who they claim is a notorious drunk, would have to buy one of these, still sealed in plastic, in the 1960s, take it apart, which has no discernible screws. Here, let's see. So he'd have to take this apart and not ruin any of the exposures. That is completely disassembled. So soon as you crack this thing open, all of those images, or all of those individual frames, are being exposed to light. So even if you did this in a dark room, you're not going to get this put back together correctly without cross-contamination. Polaroids were notorious for being susceptible to dust. These were packaged in a sterile environment with no dust. However, just being in cameras, the process of it sliding out of the Polaroid after you take the film, or take your shot, is enough to create scratches. Oh, Jesus, I'm really leaning into the mic. Sorry. It's enough to create scratches on the film. So, I find it really hard to believe that guy could take that apart in a clean room, in a clean dark room, modify those photos, and put it back together. Then predict where the people that are doing the control are going to pick up their film. Yeah, it's very, very far-fetched to me. Ooh, yeah. That shutter is nice. I love it. I wonder... No, this one's battery is dead too. This one's great. I love this camera. OG Polaroid. So when I bought this one, funny story, it was folded up, so it folds down. So it has a flash built in. It was folded down, and nobody knew what it was because it was folded down. They're like, well, I think it's a Polaroid, but I don't see like I looked through the viewfinder and I don't see anything. I was like, it must be missing some parts. I'll give you $5 for it. And they're like, okay, cool. So I take it home. The first thing I do is flip. Oh, well, look at there. The full thing is there. And now you can buy film for this at Walmart. Yeah, 600 film. Cool little camera. It's 2 weeks in a row we talked about cameras. I love me some cameras now. But this is the one in the photos that he was grabbing on, and he was... I do have something I want to say about the grabbing and holding on to him like he does. And we'll get to that. We'll get to that before too long. All right? Bear with me. We've got to rip through some of these. We're already an hour and 15 minutes in, and we've only done Act 1. We've got 4 more acts to do. So let's rip through some of these, okay, folks? Let me get a little bit of this Jamba Juice in my system. Jamba Juice, let's go. Oof. My little ankle itches. I love scratching itches. All right, folks, let's tie into it. Act 2. Act 2, capturing the impossible. So by 1966, Ted Serios had become both a sensation and a cautionary tale. His strange thoughtographs had made their way into academic papers, magazines, and late-night conversations about psychic power. And while most scientists dismissed him outright, enough credible witnesses had seen him perform the phenomena under controlled conditions that it couldn't be brushed aside completely. For Dr. Jule Eisenbud, this was a vindication. He had spent 2 years meticulously documenting the events, every camera setting, every witness statement, every failure and success. To him, Ted wasn't just another subject in a psychiatric study. He was proof that the human consciousness might extend beyond the body. Eisenbud's Denver home had become part laboratory, part stage, and part asylum. Sessions were held every several weeks, for weeks at a time. The ritual was almost always the same. Ted would arrive, sometimes with a hangover, sometimes already drunk. He'd demand a drink, usually whiskey, to loosen his mind. Eisenbud would humor him, set out the Polaroid cameras on a table, while his assistants checked the lighting and the angles. Witnesses were carefully chosen. They ranged from psychology students to professional photographers, even stage magicians and skeptical scientists. Eisenbud knew the accusations that followed psychic experiments: sleight of hand, camera tampering, double exposure. He wanted transparency, or at least the appearance of it. Once the cameras were ready, Ted would shuffle into position. He'd pull out his gizmo. If that doesn't sound like euphemism, I don't know what is. A short black paper tube, sometimes reinforced with cardboard or foil, and press it against the camera lens. The gizmo fascinated and infuriated skeptics alike. Ted insisted it helped him focus his thoughts like a psychic funnel. Critics, however, were convinced it was a smokescreen. Then the show would begin. The first phase of the ritual was always about energy. Ted would pace, mutter to himself, sometimes shout a curse. His eyes would go glassy, his face flushed. He would often claim to feel the image forming in his mind, like a pressure building behind his forehead. When he was ready, he'd shout, "Now!" Someone would press the shutter, or more often, Ted would do it himself. The camera would click, the motor would whir, and the white square would slide out into Eisenbud's waiting hands. Everyone would crowd around, watching the photos slowly develop. Sometimes nothing appeared, just a gray, dull color of overexposure, but sometimes something did appear. The effect was electric. Buildings, statues, landscapes, once even a space capsule. So while we're talking about this, we're going to slide over and we're going to look at these pictures. No one could explain it. The film was fresh and sealed. The cameras were inspected, the room's lighting was controlled, yet somehow these strange, blurry images materialized where none should have been. Eisenbud wasn't the only one documenting the phenomena. He invited professional photographers to oversee the process, including a few who'd brought their own equipment. Many left baffled. One photographer, Robert Smith, recalled in a later interview that he'd been certain he'd catch Ted cheating, but he couldn't. He said, quote, "I was inches from him, and I still can't tell you how he did it. If it was a trick, it was a damn good trick." End quote. The success of these sessions drew national attention. Newspapers ran headlines like "Man projects images with his mind" and "Psychiatrist claims thought photography is real." Television producers wanted to book Ted for talk shows. Parapsychologists from around the world requested access to Eisenbud's archive. But as the spotlight grew brighter, the pressure on Ted intensified. He wasn't built for fame. He was volatile, insecure, perpetually intoxicated. He would show up late, belligerent, or too drunk to function. He'd pick fights with witnesses, accusing skeptics of blocking his powers. Still, Eisenbud persevered. He saw genius beneath the chaos, a raw psychic channel unfiltered by intellect or ego. He says, quote, "Ted operates from instinct. He is the id unbound, the purest expression of mental projection." End quote. To Eisenbud, Ted was not just an experiment. He was a mirror reflecting the untapped potential of human consciousness. In early 1966, Life magazine sent a reporter and a photographer to Denver to witness the phenomena firsthand. The session was a tense affair. Ted was visibly drunk, sweating, muttering, demanding more whiskey. The Life crew, unimpressed, insisted on total control of the equipment. They unwrapped brand new Polaroid film packs themselves, checked the camera for hidden devices, and even searched Ted for concealed objects. The session began with the usual ritual. Ted ranted, paced, waved his gizmo around. He pressed it to the camera and yelled, "Now!" And nothing happened. The next shot the same, then another, blank photos. The Life photographer rolled his eyes. Eisenbud tried to calm the room. Then on the fifth attempt, something appeared. As the image developed, everyone felt silent. On the Polaroid was a faint image of what looked like a structure, rectangular with vertical lines that resembled windows or columns. It was unclear but recognizable. The Life team was stunned. They had maintained control of the camera the entire time. The film had never left their possession, and yet there it was, a picture that shouldn't exist. The magazine ultimately published a neutral piece, neither debunking nor endorsing Serios. But for Eisenbud, that single session was enough. He considered it the most important validation of his entire career. However, not everyone shared his enthusiasm. Magicians especially were relentless in their attacks. James Randi, known for exposing psychic frauds, was among Ted's loudest critics. He claimed Ted was using tiny photographic transparencies, microslides, hidden in the gizmo. According to Randi, Ted could hold the slide against the camera lens, flash a light, and imprint the image directly onto the film. Eisenbud bristled at the accusation. He invited Randi and others to replicate the results under controlled conditions. They tried and failed. No one could duplicate Ted's specific style of images. The warped geometry, the strange overexposures, the uneven light patterns that defied easy explanation. Even experts at Kodak examined the photos and admitted they couldn't explain every anomaly. But still, Randi remained unconvinced. He says, quote, "If it looks like a trick, it probably is." The skeptic's persistence only deepened Eisenbud's obsession. He became consumed by defending Ted's reputation, and by extension, his own. His peers in psychiatry mocked him, calling him gullible, a man chasing ghosts, but Eisenbud didn't back down. He refined his methods further. Cameras were sealed inside transparent boxes. Ted was searched before and after sessions. Witnesses were allowed to handle every piece of equipment. Still, sometimes images would appear, though increasingly infrequent. Eisenbud began to suspect that every act of skepticism might be interfering with the phenomena. Psychic abilities, he theorized, are delicate, influenced by emotional and mental states. Hostility in the environment may suppress them. This reasoning gave him comfort. It allowed him to interpret failure not as proof of fraud, but further evidence of psychic sensitivity. Ted, meanwhile, leaned into the myth. He started dressing the part, dark suits, sunglasses, a cigarette always hanging from his lips. When reporters came, he posed dramatically, calling himself a human projector. But behind the bravado, he was crumbling. His drinking was out of control. He'd vanish for days, then reappear broke, hungover, begged Eisenbud for another chance. And the doctor always obliged. One particularly strange session from that period would become legendary among those who followed the case. Eisenbud had arranged for Ted to be filmed performing live. This setup was clinical. Bright lights, controlled conditions, multiple cameras recording from different angles. Ted, visibly nervous, gulped down whiskey before starting. For nearly an hour, he failed. Every photo came out blank. The tension in the room grew unbearable. Witnesses whispered that the whole thing was a sham. Then suddenly, Ted grew agitated. He slammed his glass down, shouted obscenities, and demanded silence. He grabbed the camera, pressed the gizmo to the lens, and shouted, "Now!" When the Polaroid developed, everyone gasped. The image that emerged was bizarre. An interior scene resembling a museum exhibit. Something complete with display cases and framed art. The details were hazy, but it was unmistakable. Not a random blur. Eisenbud's notes from that night describe a psychic breakthrough under extreme duress. For the doctor, it was another victory. For Ted, it was another reason to drink. As the experiments continued, the line between science and spectacle blurred even further. Eisenbud's lab became a revolving door of believers and skeptics, each hoping to witness history or to expose a fraud. Ted treated them all the same, cursing at them when they doubted him, laughing when the impossible appeared right before their eyes. Yet something was changing him. He looked older, worn down. The endless sessions, the drinking, the constant scrutiny, it was taking a toll. Even Eisenbud noted the decline. In one journal entry he wrote, "Ted's vitality seems tied to his ability. When his spirits falter, so too does the phenomena." It was as if the psychic energy was eating him alive. So by the time Eisenbud's book was published in 1967, Ted Serios was already fading from public consciousness. His book was dense, clinical, and meticulously detailed. It included reproductions of Ted's photographs, sessions notes, and witness statements. Eisenbud presented the evidence as objectively as possible, but his bias was clear. He believed. The scientific community did not. Reviewers dismissed the book as pseudoscience. Psychologists called it an embarrassment. Magicians derived it as naive. And yet, buried in the criticism was a persistent mystery. If Ted was faking it, how was he doing it? No one ever caught him in the act. Some suggested the answer lay not in trickery, but in psychology. That Ted's mind, under extreme stress and intoxication, might unconsciously manipulate his surroundings in ways not yet understood. Eisenbud flirted with the idea that, in later interviews, he says, perhaps Ted's subconscious is creating the conditions of the trick without its awareness, a kind of self-deception that manifests physically. It was an elegant way to preserve the mystery. In those years, thoughtography became a symbol of something larger, the battle between belief and skepticism, between science and the supernatural. And for a while, his name lingered in the public imagination. But as the 1970s arrived, the world moved on. Paranormal fads came and went. Uri Geller's spoon bending, the rise of psychic detectives, and Ted was left behind. He'd become a ghost of the era, remembered only by a few diehard believers that had seen the impossible happen with their own eyes. But for Eisenbud, the story wasn't over. He remained convinced that Ted had tapped into something real, something that defied explanation. In later writings, he hinted that he'd witnessed other phenomena too strange to publish. And he died still defending Ted's name. Ted Serios lived out his years in relative obscurity. He rarely spoke of his gift anymore. Some say he still carried a Polaroid in his bag until the day he died, though he never produced another photograph through psychic photography after the 1970s. Those who met him in his final years described him as a quiet, broken man. When asked about the photos, he'd shrug and say, "Maybe I was just lucky." Because even now, decades later, experts examining the surviving Polaroids admit that not all can be explained. Somehow, light anomalies and distortions inconsistent with double exposure or lens reflection. A handful remain true unknowns. And that's what keeps Ted Serios' story alive in the lore of the unexplained. Whatever the truth, his story forced science to confront an uncomfortable question. If thought can shape reality, how do we ever prove it can't? So that's the end of Act 2, everybody. Act 2. We've seen the rise and fall of Ted Serios here. This man got as popular as he could have. And then, with a crash, came to the end. Came to his bottom. It is really unfortunate. And I imagine this man probably died of like cirrhosis of the liver or something. I don't imagine he lived a very healthy lifestyle, drinking as much as he did. I say that as I grab my beer. So, just in these first two acts, we're looking at a lot of information here. A lot of information. I'm starting to kind of form an idea of what I think is really going on here. I'm going to hold on to that until the end. I'm going to hold on to it. Going to hold on to it. And let's, here you go. This is, well, I'll give you a little palate cleanser before we move on to Act 3.
Turtles, Brussels. What's turtles, huh?
Potatoes. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew.
The late great potato, everybody. And also the late great chicken.
Chicken attack. Chicken attack.
I am yet to make redemptions for the new pets. We will. We will. All right, well, let's move on to Act 3, everybody. Act 3, the cracks in the film. Let's go. By 1967, Ted Serios had gone from a curious oddity to a polarizing figure in the scientific community. His name was whispered in parapsychology circles. studied in college seminars, and jeered at by professional magicians. He was both miracle and menace. A man who, depending on who you asked, had either proven the power of the mind or humiliated science itself. The release of Dr. Jule Eisenbud's book, had been meant as a triumph. Years of evidence, documentation, photographs assembled to prove that Ted's abilities were genuine. But instead of vindication, it opened the floodgates. The skeptics came for blood. For months after its publication, the book became a target. Reviewers of scientific journals dismissed it outright. Scientific Magazine called it a masterclass in gullibility. The New York Times ran a skeptical feature questioning Eisenbud's credibility. Magicians, psychologists, and photograph experts dissected every claim, every Polaroid, and technical explanation Eisenbud had ever offered. The most vocal critic was James Randi, of course, who took it personally. To him, Eisenbud's endorsement of Serios was just pseudoscience. It was a threat to reason itself. He says, quote, "There's no psychic power here. There's only one thing at work, deceit," end quote. Randi went so far as to recreate the phenomenon himself on a camera using a rigged paper tube and a miniature photographic slide. The results were eerily similar to Ted's thoughtographs. The magician's demonstrations sent shockwaves through the press. If a trick could replicate the same images, was Ted just a clever fraud with better showmanship? But as with so many things in the Ted Serios saga, the truth wasn't that simple. Indeed, many of the most baffling photographs have been taken under strict controls. Cameras locked in boxes, film supplied and handled by independent observers, the gizmo inspected and even confiscated. And still, sometimes the photos appeared. The skeptics countered that Eisenbud's methodology was flawed, that Ted could have palmed tiny slides, hidden transparencies, or even used reflections from the room. A few magicians even suggested that he mastered a sleight of hand trick that involved aligning the camera just so that an image hidden in the gizmo reflected into the lens at the perfect angle. It was possible, sure, but those who'd seen it happen up close weren't convinced. Robert Smith, one of the photographers who observed the early sessions, later said, "If it was a trick, it was a damn good one. I watched him fail 20 times in a row, and then suddenly, bang, there's an image of a building that no one in the room had seen before. No slides, no projectors, no hidden film, just Ted sweating bullets and yelling at a camera." End quote. Eisenbud knew these weren't conclusive proofs, but he clung to them. Each unexplained detail was a lifeline. One more reason to believe. The more Eisenbud defended Ted, the more isolated he became in the scientific community. His colleagues at the University of Colorado distanced themselves. Invitations to conferences dried up. Privately, other psychiatrists whispered that Eisenbud had lost his mind, that his obsession with Serios had crossed into delusion. But he didn't care. He believed he was documenting something historic, a man capable of breaking the laws of physics through sheer mental projection. But as the scrutiny mounted, even Eisenbud began to notice the cracks. Ted's successes were becoming rarer and rarer. Weeks would pass without a single usable image. The sessions grew chaotic, Ted shouting, throwing fits, or storming out when nothing appeared. He began to refuse the most controlled setups, complaining that locked boxes or distance cameras blocked his energy. He demanded more freedom, more alcohol, and fewer witnesses. To Eisenbud's credit, he tried to rein things in. He wanted consistent documentation, but his patience wore thin as Ted spiraled. He started to wonder if Ted's abilities were truly psychic or if they were just a product of a mind unraveling. One night in 1968, during a private session, Ted broke down completely. Eisenbud recorded the incidents in his notes. Quote, "Ted became visibly agitated after repeated blank exposures. He began sobbing uncontrollably, insisting that they wouldn't let him show the truth anymore. When I pressed him to explain who they were, he said, "The ones who live behind the light." End quote. If Act 2 of their partnership was the age of discovery, Act 3 was the descent into suspicion, paranoia, and disillusionment. The skeptics were relentless. Dr. Charles Tart, a parapsychologist known for his studies in altered states, reviewed Eisenbud's data and found serious methodological flaws. David Mark and Richard Kahneman, psychologists at the University of Otago, published a paper showing how the results could have been produced using sleight of hand and photographic trickery. And then came the hammer blow. A magician named David Eisendrath replicated several of Ted's most famous photos using a Polaroid, a flash, and a small transparency hidden inside a tube, nearly identical to Ted's gizmo. He performed the demonstration in front of a skeptical audience, live. The results were uncanny. The fake photos were indistinguishable from Ted's originals. The skeptics had their proof, or so they thought. When reporters asked Eisenbud for a comment, he dismissed the replication as irrelevant. Imitation does not equal explanation, he said. A magician's trick is not the same as a psychic's gift. But privately, the blow stung. Eisenbud knew the resemblance was damning. By 1969, even Eisenbud began to doubt. He wrote to a colleague, quote, "It is possible, perhaps even probable, that Ted's early successes were a combination of chance, error, and genuine psychic leakage. But whether he has since lost that gift or never truly possessed it, I cannot say." End quote. The case might have faded quietly into obscurity if not for one last bizarre twist, the so-called Thoughtograph hoax. Yes, hoax. In 1971, a researcher named David Hutton conducted his own analysis of Eisenbud's archives and concluded that some of the skeptics' replications contained subtle differences, flaws that paradoxically suggested Ted's photos might not have been faked the same way. The light of the film developed patterns, and the irregular edge distortions didn't perfectly match Randy's or Eisendrath's demonstrations. Hutton's paper didn't exonerate Ted, but they reignited the mystery. Even after years of exposure and ridicule, no one could fully prove how Ted had done it, or if he had done anything at all. Psychologists who studied the case afterward began to shift focus from the questions of fraud to the question of belief. Why did Eisenbud believe so fiercely in Ted? Why did some witnesses swear they saw the impossible, others saw only a trick? One explanation was that Eisenbud, a psychiatrist steeped in Freudian theory, had fallen victim of transference, projecting his own need for meaning and validation onto his subject. Ted wasn't just a patient, he was Eisenbud's living hypothesis. To admit fraud was to admit failure. For Ted, meanwhile, the attention was addictive. He was the center of a world that alternated between ridicule and reverence. Even when accused of deceit, he was still being talked about. And that was enough to keep the act alive. It was a parasitic relationship. Eisenbud needed Ted to prove his theories. Ted needed Eisenbud to validate his existence. And, as with all parasitic bonds, both eventually would suffer. And by the early 1970s, the pair had all but parted ways. Eisenbud still defended him in occasional interviews, but the experiments had stopped. Ted was too unstable, too unreliable. He spent the next decade drifting, taking odd jobs, getting into fights, and nursing the legend of what he once was. Sometimes he performed impromptu sessions for friends using disposable cameras or mirrors. None ever produced anything but blank frames. Yet, even in failure, there remained a trace of uncanny. One friend recalled a night when Ted, deep in his cuffs, claimed he could still do it. Quote, if the world would just shut up long enough to listen. End quote. He pointed to a cheap Polaroid camera at the wall and muttered, they don't want me anymore. The resulting photo, she said, was blank except for a faint human-like shadow in the corner, something that looked almost like a man's face caught mid-scream. Maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe not. Eisenbud never gave up belief entirely. He continued to lecture, occasionally reprinting his work in parapsychological journals. In one of his final interviews before his death in 1999, he said, quote, if I was fooled, then it was by something much greater than Ted Serios. It was by my own need to believe in that mind that could reach beyond itself. And maybe that same force was what Ted was tapping into. End quote. It was a cryptic statement and a revealing one, because that perhaps was the true mystery of Ted Serios. Not whether he could project images onto film, but whether belief itself can shape reality. In later years, new generations of skeptics revisited the Serios archives. Advances in photographic analysis offered fresh insight. High-resolution scans of the surviving Polaroids revealed inconsistencies consistent with overexposure and reflected imagery, signs pointing to fraud, yet not all of the photos could be explained. More than a dozen still defied replication. And that's the cruel brilliance of Ted Serios' story. It never gave anyone closure. For every person who dismissed him as a con man, another walked away unsettled, whispering that maybe, just maybe, he had glimpsed something real. Ted himself didn't care anymore. By the time he died in 2006, he was a forgotten man. His name surfacing only in a niche parapsychology, forums, and dusty archives, but the images remained. Hundreds of Polaroids. Some blank, some distorted, a few hauntingly vivid. They are his legacy, the evidence or illusion that thought could manifest as an image. So very interesting. We have a major downfall, a major fall from grace, if you will, with Ted Serios. I'm really having trouble nailing this one down. It really seems like there's so much going on that it's hard to really say definitively, this is one thing, this is what it is, this is what it isn't. I don't know. We're just gonna have to finish this thing out. I know. We're coming up in 6:45 local time. We're probably gonna skip Act 4 here. So Act 4 is more of what is the tagline for Act 4 here? The Mind Shadow. So in Act 4, more people try to recreate Ted Serios' images. Unsuccessfully. And then we see more about his downfall up until his death in 2006. So we're going to skip over Act 4. We're going to go straight to Act 5. I'm trying to keep this under 2 hours here. I maybe have a little more than I should have written this week. I did ramble a little bit there for a while. I did, and that's okay. I'm not upset about it. I'm going to do my damn thing. All right, folks, well, let's tie into Act 5. The final act, the echo on the film. So by the time the century turned, the name Ted Serios had become a less a person and more a ghost story for the scientific fringe. A relic from the era when belief still dared to challenge the limits of reality. It's the kind of question that refuses to die because it taps into something primal. The longing to believe that thought itself, invisible and intimate, might leave a mark on the world. That we could photograph our dreams, our fears, that the mind could be seen. And that's the legacy of Ted Serios, not proof but provocation. When you look at one of his surviving photographs today, the first thing you notice is how hauntingly ordinary they are. Let's check those out. There are no clear images of saints or spirits. No faces screaming from the ether. Most look like abstract shapes, dark stains, or fragments of buildings caught at odd angles. But that's what makes them unsettling. They're too close to real photographs to dismiss them as random, yet too distorted to trust. And that's what draws people back. Each photo feels like a memory you can't quite place. When Eisenbud died in 1999, his estate donated much of his research to the University of Maryland's Parapsychology Archive. The boxes contained hundreds of Polaroids, reels of audio recordings, handwritten notes, and correspondences between him and dozens of other researchers. Inside, you can trace his transformation from cautious investigator to true believer to wary philosopher. The archive remains open to scholars and the curious, and among its most requested items, the Polaroids of Ted Serios. Visitors describe the experience as strangely intimate, staring at the decaying chemical patterns on those little squares of film, trying to imagine a man screaming his thoughts into existence, hoping the world might see what he saw. It's not proof, it's presence. Modern photography experts who examine photographs tend to agree. Most, if not all, could have been created through conventional means. Reflections, overexposures, hidden transparencies, tricks of the light and technique. And yet there's an asterisk beside every conclusion. For all their analysis, a few of the photos remain stubbornly resistant to explanation. One, for instance, shows what appears to be a long corridor with a bright light at the end, taken in a sealed room with no such hallway in sight. Another, supposedly taken during a controlled session with Eisenbud and two witnesses present, displays the faint outline of a human figure in motion. But Ted had been sitting, motionless, several feet away. Skeptics point out that coincidence in perception can fill blanks where mystery wants to live. But the ambiguity is the point. The story of Ted Serios doesn't survive because of what can be proven. It survives because what can't be disproven. In the years following Eisenbud's death, interest in thoughtography flickered back to life. Documentaries about psychic photography began including segments on Ted, often presenting him as a precursor to more modern experiments in the, quote, mind-machine interaction. One group in the early 2000s, calling them the Neo-Thoughtographic Collective, claimed they had succeeded in producing faint digital anomalies correlated with intense concentration. However, none of it held up to peer review, but the echoes of Ted's story were there. The same desire to believe that consciousness could leave fingerprints on the material world. Ted's personal legacy, however, was lonelier. In the few surviving interviews from his later years, you could still hear flashes of the man he once was. Equal parts bravado and despair. In one recorded in the mid-1990s by a local radio station, the host asked Ted whether he regretted what he'd done. Ted chuckled darkly and said, quote, regret it? No. I showed them something real. They just weren't ready to see it. The problem ain't the camera, it's the eyes. End quote. The host asked if he'd ever tried again to produce a thoughtograph. Ted paused for a long time before replying, "Sometimes I try, but now when I focus, all I get is static, like my head is a broken TV." End quote. It's a strangely poetic metaphor for a man whose entire life revolved around trying to transmit images from the mind into the world, only to end up tuned to dead air. But even in failure, Ted Serios represented something deeply human, the yearning to make intangible tangible, to show others what lives beyond our eyes. When you strip away the controversy, the science, the skepticism, what remains is a story about connection, about one man trying desperately to be seen, and another man trying desperately to believe. Ted gave Eisenbud purpose. Eisenbud gave Ted meaning. It was the symbiosis built on faith, obsession, and loneliness. And whether you think they stumbled upon something extraordinary or merely fooled themselves, you can't deny that what they created together left a mark. Because that's the thing about belief. It's not measured by evidence, it's measured by persistence. And somehow, against all odds, Ted Serios persists. Today, paranormal researchers still cite his case study, the earliest example of what some call psychic imprint theory. The idea that the human mind can interact with electromagnetic fields, leaving traces of distortions behind. It's a pseudoscience, sure, but it refuses to die. And every so often, new cases emerge. A woman in Tokyo claims her dreams appear faintly on her phone's camera roll. A psychic in London swears her meditations create digital artifacts resembling faces. In each case, believers trace the lineage back to one man, the bellhop from Chicago who stared into a lens and demanded the universe make him visible. They call these modern manifestations Serios effects. Whether that's homage to the irony depends on who you act. But for all the fascination, one thing about Ted's story still unsettles those who study it. Not the possibility that he captured psychic images, but the emotional undercurrent of what those images seem to say. When researchers digitized Eisenbud's archive, they noticed recurring motifs, doorways, corridors, distant figures framed in light, symbols of passage, transformation, and longing. It's as if subconsciously Ted wasn't trying to project images of places. He was trying to project escape routes, doors to somewhere. To believers, that's proof of a mind reaching beyond the physical, trying to pierce the veil between consciousness and the unknown. But to skeptics, it's the tragic expression of a man trapped in delusion, trying to photograph the exit from his own mind. Both interpretations are equally haunting. And maybe that's the real legacy of Ted Serios, not that he proved anything supernatural, but that he exposed something psychological. The need to believe that our inner world is as powerful enough to change the outer one. And maybe that belief isn't delusional at all. Maybe it's survival. Because whether through art, religion, science, or madness, humans have always tried to project meaning into the void. Ted just happened to do it with a Polaroid camera. He was a reflection of us, the collective desire to see ourselves reflected in the mysteries we chase. In the dim light of history, that might be the greatest thoughtograph of all. Not a photo, but an imprint onto the collective imagination. A reminder that between light and shadow, between thought and matter, there's a sliver of space where belief and illusion blur. And sometimes in that space, if you're reckless enough to look long enough, something looks back. And that's where Ted Serios lives now, in that blur. In every blurry photo you can't quite explain, in every strange coincidence that feels too meaningful to dismiss, in every dark room where someone whispers, maybe it's real. This is where belief meets the lens. The story of Ted Serios isn't about proving the supernatural. It's about the terrifying and beautiful truth that we might be the supernatural. That the ghosts, miracles, and anomalies that we chase are reflections of our own unconscious trying to make contact. Maybe that's what Ted did. Maybe that's all any of us can do. We project, we manifest, we leave behind imperfect images of what we hope is true. And when those images fade, when the film peels and the chemicals age, all that remains is the echo of the attempt. All right, folks. We've reached the end. I know we're in the middle of an ad. I'm sorry. But that's a lot to take in. That is a lot to take in. It's really difficult to like completely drive home what we're dealing with here. I'm very curious if we run these images that he produced through like reverse Google image search, what we would find. You know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to freaking do it. I want to see. I really do. All right, let's go downloads. Let's pick one of these. One, two, three, four, five windows at the top. So I did it. Let me show you what I'm looking at here. Oh, we're already on the scene. Let me kill the slideshow. So I did a reverse Google image search of this image. And I was wondering if we could just find that building. I mean, there's tons and tons of buildings that look the same or similar. But I'm not seeing, like, the exact photo. So, like, these are definitely palm trees. I mean, it's a very, well, you know, let's just look. Let's just Google it. Some of the buildings. Yeah, so I Googled, has anyone found the buildings in Ted Serios' photos? Yes, some of the buildings in Ted Serios' photos have thought to be identified as real places, while others remain unclear or generic in appearance. Ooh, very interesting. So we have one that's there's an RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police hangar. One photograph was later identified as depicting as part of a hangar belonging to the Air Division of the RCMP. Chicago Hilton Hotel, in one instance, when attempting to picture the Denver Hotel, the resulting image was the Chicago Hilton instead. So we know that this was done in Denver, right? But the image that came through was of the Chicago Hilton, which is the hotel he used to work at. And then there's one photo appears to be of Jule Eisenbud's ranch, although the barn structure in the photo was different from the actual structure at the time, possibly a distorted or altered version of the real places or images. Let's look at Reddit, see what Reddit's got to say. I don't know. Reddit's kind of polarized. Like, half of these guys are saying it's real, and the other half are saying it's totally fake. One guy says, "You would see lots of naked women in my thoughts." Yeah. Still, I don't know. I feel like the images that you see in these photos, it makes me wonder. So he's projecting mental images of places he's seen in like photos, like in encyclopedias or what have you. But out of the hundreds of photos, only one of them has ever been found to be in an encyclopedia. So, like, how would he produce an image of the Taj Mahal in an image that doesn't really exist? I want to point out something. Let me see. All right, so that's the Pantheon. Is that what that is? I want to find an image of it. Like old images of the Pantheon. Wait, wasn't the Pantheon, when it was discovered, wasn't it like originally in like horrible condition and they restored it? Am I wrong in that thinking? Wait, how many pillars? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But this image of the Pantheon that he produced is very different. let's look on Google Maps. I need to see where this is. Oh, Lord, that's in the middle of town? This doesn't make sense to me. All right, check this out. I'm going to switch from the slideshow back to my display. So here is the Pantheon as we know it today. This is Street View, Google Maps. All right. Look at this image that he has. Oh no. Let's get back to the image of the Pantheon. How on earth? It looks like this is on a hill. Like his photo is on a hill. But this is like smack dab in the middle of town. When I say it's in the middle of town, it is in the middle of town. Folks, here's your little dot, or here's your pin. There is no good way. I mean, that's the Pantheon. We know this is the Pantheon. That just doesn't make sense. It's almost like that's what it would have looked like in ancient Greek times. Right? Am I grasping at straws here? Is that too much? It's just, I don't know. That's just weird to me. It's so weird. I really have no clue how that could have been made. I really have no clue. I mean, because it looks like it's on a hill. So is there like a Pantheon twin that's on a hill? Oh. Oh. Is this it? What is this? I feel like this is it. What is this? What? This is not the Pantheon I was expecting. Look here. It's on a hill. So that's the Pantheon in Athens. So let's look up the Pantheon in Athens. Oh, yes, very different. Let's try to match this angle. This street view, maybe? No. I'm just trying to get a frame of reference here. Okay, that's not quite right. So it's the Acropolis, not the Pantheon. Hmm. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8. And his image has 7. Interesting. And this is the one I was thinking of that was, it had fallen down and then it was rebuilt. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Very interesting indeed. It's like he's looking at the Pantheon in Greece, not in Athens, not the Acropolis, but the Pantheon. But like it was back in Greece times. That's very interesting. I'm just rambling at this point, but no, very interesting indeed. All right, we're running over here, folks. Let's break it down. Let me tell you what I'm thinking here. I think what we're dealing with is truly an unknown. I think this is really paranormal. I think Ted Serios at the beginning had a connection. I think that he was able to project somehow his thoughts onto film. And a lot of people like to say, no, he was faking it. He was putting something in his gizmo, as he called it, his little cardboard tube. However, there's been many, many circumstances where his gizmo was completely disassembled and found nothing inside. And in those circumstances, we're able to find some incredible images. I don't think he was faking it. I think he was really producing these images. But I do believe that as time went on, his alcoholism might have got the better of him. And as a result, his psychic connection faltered. And his ability to reproduce these images failed. And sure, I believe stress may very well had something to do with it. How would you feel if there was a room full of people watching you do what you do? You would be stressed. I mean, stress is an incredible factor. It does so much to the human body. It's very interesting. I'm going to say that this is really paranormal. However, I feel like he lost his gift. And I feel like it was twofold. It was partly because of stress he lost his gift, and probably the drinking got the better of him. Unfortunately. But, that's the way the cookie crumbles. So yes, today I am going to say that the story of Thoughtography as you wish, is really a paranormal effect. And Ted Serios was really doing it. However, I don't think it lasted very long for him. So with that being said, I think we're going to wrap it up, folks. We're getting close to my bedtime here. I'm an old man and I need to be in bed soon, so we're going to get on out of here. But before we go, I have a closing statement to make. But before I make that statement, I want to say, for those of you who have your own tales of paranormal mishappenings, your own stories of mystery, of UFOs, of aliens, of ghosts, of ghouls and goblins, if you want to share it with us, feel free. Reach out to us at beyondshadowspodcast@gmail.com. Send it to me. I will be glad to read your stories online or live here on the podcast. We will talk about it. We'll tell you whether or not we think it's really paranormal or not. If you've got a suggestion for the show, also feel free to reach out at beyondshadowspodcast@gmail.com. If you like the show, please give us a like and a follow. Hit that sub when you can. Follow us on YouTube. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio. We are everywhere, folks. Everywhere. If you like what you see, scan this QR code up here in the top left corner. That'll give you a link to everything that we do. I want to say thanks again to everybody that subbed on YouTube this last 30 days. We've had 6 new followers on YouTube. Thank you, every single one of you. I appreciate every one of you deeply and completely with all of my heart. And thank you to all of you that watch live on Twitch. If you're listening to this on YouTube or Spotify, Apple Podcasts, what have you, you want to watch the show live, we are live every Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, twitch.tv/Beyond the Shadows Podcast. Come on and join the show live. Comment, talk to us live while we're doing this. You will be featured on the show. We will put you on there. I don't edit these episodes. These go straight in. These get uploaded the way they are. That's the way it goes. I appreciate every single one of you. Let's wrap this thing up. Are y'all ready? So when you look at one of Ted Serios' Polaroids, you're not just looking at a photograph. You're looking at an obsession. A man who believed he could wrestle with reality and win. And maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. But for a few strange years in the glow of a developing photograph, he made the impossible feel possible. And that's the kind of madness humanity was built on. So if you find yourself holding a camera, take a picture, or even glance into a mirror and ask yourself, what if something's looking back? What if there's something you haven't seen? Pull that trigger. Take that picture. Don't be scared. But whatever you do, make sure you follow us Beyond the Shadows. Good night, everybody.
Creature like that. How would it ever die?
And this monster starts running right at me.
Annihilated by nuclear bombs. Beast is not dead. I put 4 bullets into him. Oh, you're crazy.
But I saw that monster too. All I want is for someone to believe me.
Contaminated.
Face. It's horrible. Look like it would scare you to death.
All right, let's get to work.
Beyond the shadows.